What is up everybody, it's your boy Cameron Bash here and welcome back to the Movement channel, where today we're coming at you guys with another WWE 2K22 video talking about 7 unlikely superstars who could be in WWE 2K22. Now, it's no secret to anyone that the wrestling video game landscape is about to burst wide open with more new IPs on the horizon than ever before. AEW's console game, The Wrestling Code, and Ultra Violence Pro Wrestling are just a few examples of what's to come. So WWE 2K22 needs to pull out all the stops in more ways than one if they're going to remain the king of pro wrestling video games. One of the ways we think they'll do that is by adding some crazy and unlikely names to the roster that people wouldn't expect to drive more interest in the game. This is something that the franchise is no stranger to, as we've seen celebrity stars and fictional characters added to the game before, but for WWE 2K22, we think it's entirely possible that they'll go bigger than they've ever gone before and pull in multiple big name draws for the game. With AEW already pulling a name like Owen Hart for their game, and with celebrities like Shaq and Mike Tyson possibly to follow, you know WWE is going to see that as a threat and try to counter these moves in big ways. So, without further ado, let's jump into the list. Coming in at number 1, we've got Bad Bunny. Now, we're starting with Bad Bunny because we think this one is a little bit more logical than some of the other names on this list, considering he was just featured in WWE earlier this year at WrestleMania. But in that same vein, I don't think many people are considering him for the game because having a celebrity star at WrestleMania is pretty common, but how often do those people end up in the game itself? With Bad Bunny being such a big fan of WWE already, we think the idea of him being featured in WWE 2K22 would be exciting to him, and he'd work with the developers to make getting him in the game as smooth and as easy as possible, just like how he worked with the WWE very closely when it came to him training for his match at WrestleMania. At number 2 on our list, you need to stand back because the Hurricane is coming through. The Hurricane is one of the most famous masked men in the entire wrestling business. He's made his mark not only throughout WWE history, but in many other wrestling companies as well. Most recently, he was brought back to WWE in 2019 in a backstage producer role, during which time he did a few different backstage segments on Raws and things like that. On April 15th, 2021, he was furloughed by WWE during the COVID pandemic. A few months later, on November 7th, he appeared during the Elite Deletion match in AEW to aid Matt Hardy, and then just 2 weeks later, on November 22nd, WWE brought him back as a full-time employee, seemingly looking to lock this man down to the company once and for all. His next public appearance came not too long after that, as he appeared in the 2021 Royal Rumble match, in which he was eliminated by Big E and Bobby Lashley. Even with all the love for this man and how active he's remained over the years, he hasn't been seen in a WWE video game in over 13 years. The last time he was in one was SmackDown vs. Raw 2008, and that wasn't even the Hurricane, that was Gregory Helms. The Hurricane hasn't been in a game since WWE Day of Reckoning 2 in 2005. It was crazy finding that out today, so we think it's time the Hurricane finally had another day in the sun when it comes to the world of wrestling video games, and at the same time, the WWE can capitalize on his appearance and hopefully encourage a few more people to pick up a copy of WWE 2K22. Number 3 on our list is one of the biggest newbies in WWE right now, and that is Gabe Steveson. At this stage, it's no secret who this guy is. The 2020 Olympic gold medalist has risen to fame like a rocket after signing with WWE earlier this year, and already has made it to the main roster by being drafted to Raw. It's very rare that a guy comes into the WWE and climbs the ladder this quickly, but considering his performance at the Olympics, it's no surprise why. And with that, it's very likely we're also going to see the very rare example of someone being put in a WWE game this early into their career as well. On the same hand, it could be unlikely because it would be less than a year all in all by the time he's in the game from the time he signed with WWE. Would that be a record for the quickest time making it into the game? Maybe. But because of who this person is, we think there's a good chance that WWE will pull the strings to make this one happen. Okay, so we're getting into some weirder territory here, so bear with us through the explanations. But coming up at number 4 on the list is The Big Show, and other former WWE talents now in AEW. Now, this is probably the most unlikely on the list, but you have to take into account what happened with the last WWE game that came out, WWE 2K Battlegrounds. That game had quite a few release superstars in the baseline game to begin with, which can be more difficult to alter the closer you get to the game's release. But something they 100% could have altered were the DLC plans for the game. In December of 2020, right when Sting was in the middle of his return to wrestling in AEW, WWE 2K Battlegrounds added him to the game as free DLC in a move that was quite shocking and confusing at the time, as everyone expected that Sting would have been cut. Why he ended up being in a WWE game right at the height of his AEW debut, we don't know for sure. But if that was a purposeful decision, then WWE could make the purposeful decision to do something like that again, and could include superstars that they have the likeness rights to in WWE 2K22, even if they're in another company at the time. It's definitely a strange move to make, one that has that double-edged factor of both benefiting yourself and promoting the competition, but in the current world of wrestling, with forbidden doors being flung open left and right, anything is possible. Speaking of anything being possible, you're going to have to hold on to that belief for this next one, as coming in at number 5, we have John Cena, Peacekeeper Edition. That's right folks, we are indeed talking about the same John Cena portrayed character that appeared in the Suicide Squad 2021 movie, and is due to have his very own spin-off show to release early next year. This just seems like a very easy and no-brainer type of cross-promotion that can benefit both the game and the Peacekeeper franchise in one easy move. They'll already no doubtably have a John Cena model ready for the game, so all they need to do is dress it up like the Peacekeeper, and there you'll have it. Peacekeeper in WWE 2K22. John Cena just seems like the right person to be able to do something like this around, to where it's going to be received well by fans and audiences, while also doing good things for the different businesses coming together to make this crossover happen. Heck, and while we're at it, let's make number 6 on our list The Rock, Black Adam Edition. This would work in the exact same vein to that of the Peacekeeper crossover, where you just take The Rock's model in-game, dress him up like Black Adam, adding a few effects here and there to just bring it more to life in a cinematic way. This would be the type of crossover to likely come later in the game's life cycle, in line with the movie releasing, but once that door has been opened with something like a John Cena Peacekeeper crossover, if all goes well with it, then the possibilities would be endless, to a point where they could even go beyond just the natural picks of WWE superstars who are playing these superheroes, and instead, just bring any and all characters in, like Batman or Superman themselves, in a very similar fashion to how the Terminator was added to the game in WWE 2K16. Of course, this dream scenario of having a handful of DC characters in a WWE game is pretty unlikely, just like the video title says, but if WWE really wanted to do something to send shockwaves through the community, then working with a brand as large as DC would be something that no other wrestling game would likely be able to pull off. And last, but certainly not least, number 7 on our list is the late great Shad Gaspard. Shad tragically passed away last year in an event that involved him saving his son's life. It's an event that shocked the wrestling world as it came completely out of left field. Shad Gaspard was a man who not only loved wrestling, but also loved video games. While working the independent circuit in wrestling, he went on to work in the video game industry in many different ways, most notably for his motion capture performance of Kratos in 2018's God of War. Given this man's love for both wrestling and video games, and due to the heroic way he passed away, I think it would be amazing if WWE honoured his legacy by including him one more time in a game franchise that he's already been a part of numerous times already. To be able to honour him one last time like that, that'd be a great and selfless thing for them to do. And with that guys, that brings us to the end of our list. What do you think of these suggestions? Do you think we'll see some of these people in the game? Or have you got some unlikely suggestions of your own? Whatever it is, make sure to leave it down in the comment section below, as we do reply and interact with pretty much all of our comments in one way or another. And while you're down there, don't forget to drop a like on the video and subscribe for more WWE 2K22 content. Thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you soon for another one.